Welcome back. We now want to wrap up our news review this morning. This is Power Breakfast, and that's a hashtag to use. Remember, more coming up in the next hour. We have some very nice DJ mixes coming up, so you do want to stand by for that. As well as Q Band. I've seen some comments on social media, people loving the beautiful voices. Do stand by for more beautiful music from the group. I'm still here with my panelists, Amina Mohammed, Kakai Kissinger, Eric Wanjohi and Mary Mwangi. We want to wrap up the news review. We continue with a focus on the National Assembly and the Senate, which will be having the very first sittings on Thursday next week. Not ostensibly, actually, to be sworn into office. Yes, that's when they take the oath of office. But a few headlines to do with that, and most of them captured on page 5 of the Daily Nation. One has to do, of course, the main talking point is about their salaries. We've discussed about that. Moshomba says sorry for opposing MP salary cuts. It's also been captured. She actually called a press conference later in the afternoon yesterday to make her stand known. The other headline is about opposition MPs saying that they will skip House sittings. Before we even take a look at the race for Speaker, let's discuss this one. And MPs allied to the National Super Alliance have said they will stay away from the swearing-in ceremony until the Supreme Court makes a decision on the validity of President Uhuru Kenyatta's win. Let's look at the dates. Of course, Bwana Kissinger informs me that on the 14th day, which is next Friday, yes, we should be having a ruling from the Supreme Court, yes, with regard to the presidential election petition. Now, just the day before that, we have the swearing-in of Parliament. So the MPs from NASA say they're waiting for that Friday to get the ruling before they can be sworn in, yet the swearing-in is set for Friday. But I don't get this, because if they're doing it in solidarity, or rather as they wait for the presidential petition, we've seen governors allied to that side of the political divide, and they've been sworn in. One of them, Ali Hassan Joho, that event was even attended by the NASA presidential candidate Raila Odinga, and one of the principals, his running mate Kalonzo Musyoka, attended two such ceremonies, the one in Taita Taveta for Granton Samboja and in Kitui for Charity Ngilu. I don't get, do you understand where they're coming from, Mary?
I believe they want to show solidarity with their principal, and they also want to show that they are standing united and that they will be a force to reckon with in Parliament. However, I'm a bit disappointed. I would like them to be sworn in, and then they can do what it is that they need to do thereafter. So my message to them is get sworn in. We've seen our governors get sworn in. So right now it's more about theatrics and more about playing out to the the public.
Yes.
But let's wait for the ruling, and then we can see what happens thereafter. Because
none of them is going to give up their seats, whichever way the ruling by the Supreme Court goes. None of them, I'm sure, is willing to say, okay, fine, oh, Jubilee, I've won, so I'll give up my seat.
Yes, and swearing in is an operation of the law. The law is very clear, and it says that once the IBC has determined who won the election, and in this case is what was announced by IBC, then 30 days from there, Parliament must, within 30 days, Parliament must reconvene. And His Excellency is within the right to do this, and he has followed all the parliamentary procedures and rules to call for the swearing in. And there's nowhere in the law which says that if there's a petition which has been filed, then the President is barred from swearing in. Swearing in is a function of Parliament, it's a function of the law. The President must be there because that's the first sitting of Parliament. So I don't understand the push why they don't want to be sworn in. In any event, even if the outcome comes out the way they expect or they don't expect it, it's still a function that must be done.
Yes.
So for me, I think it is not logical. In any event, it will be done whether they refuse to come or not. It will be done because it will be gazetted.
But there are those who argue, and if you flip the coin, that the President had 30 days, and the 30 days lapse of the 8th of September, that he could have actually waited until this ruling by the Supreme Court is made, and then the swearing in of Parliament could have come later, and there would be no such problem.
I mean, it's hypocritical, first of all, for them not to show up, considering they went to the governors were sworn. So this is their art of doublespeak. They haven't chosen what they want to tell the public yet. They're still deciding and stumbling over. On the other hand, the President does not have that luxury of stumbling over the law. The Constitution is very clear. Article 126 says he has to call for the first sitting. He has to gazette
but he
the
still
date.
has more days. He could have waited a few more days.
He could have waited, but even in 2013,
Tuesday would still have happened.
Even in 2013, President Kibaki did not wait for the petition to be heard. He convened Parliament, and Article 142 says that it gives the term of the president. Right now, President Kenyatta, Uhuru Muigai, is the president of this nation. His term has not yet lapsed.
That is not in contention.
It's not in contention.
Because even after the ruling by the Supreme Court, it is not up until the swearing in of a new president that he ceases to be president. He will continue being president even if the ruling by the Supreme Court does not go his way. Hence, the argument is, and some people may argue, that it could have been in bad faith for the president to swear in, to call for the swearing in of Parliament just before the Supreme Court ruling. That probably would have waited for 2-3 more days. It would still have happened.
The president wants things to go on. The governors were sworn in. They've already started reshuffling the county government, and they are moving on. You know, it's not moving on from. He said he will respect the petition. He's waiting for it to be heard, but things have to go on surely. Kenyans voted in, and it's unfortunate that the NASA members of Parliament are putting their interest first and that of their principal, and not their voters. The electorates want them to go to Parliament and start legislating on issues that affect the people that send them there. And the fact that they are using the presidential petition to put us to just lower their tools and say we're not going to Parliament to be sworn in, and you were sent there by taxpayers. They should start behaving like the servants they are, not the masters that they think they are.
And Amina Mohammed is very harsh. You don't have a liking for members of Parliament, clearly. But
Fred, on this one, I think the members of Parliament that are saying that they don't want to be sworn in immediately are very ill-advised, because they don't understand that at the moment they are members of Parliament elect. They are not officially members of Parliament. I don't know whether they understand that they are much more effective in their official capacity than in their personal capacity. Because in their official capacity, they can be able to legislate. They can be able to mobilize their numbers in order to change things. But in their personal capacity, their hands are tied, because if they go to Parliament in their personal capacities, they become just visitors.
They can even be turned away at the gate.
They can even be turned away at the gate. So they are much more effective when they are in their official capacity vis-a-vis their personal capacity. But His Excellency the President is very brilliant on what he has done, if I may respond to that. He has seen the kind of atmosphere this country has been created, the atmosphere that has been created in the country, and he wants things to move on. So he's saying that the country should not remain at a standstill, waiting the verdict of the Supreme Court. Let us move on. Let Parliament start their functions. Let them start now debating upon national bills and development projects in the country as we wait for the Supreme Court. When the Supreme Court is over, we will continue with the development of the country, regardless of the verdict that has been given. So what he has done is very good. It's good for the country, saying that it is time for people to come back to work. Even members of Parliament, start working. Stop being spectators of a court process, but start working and start delivering what you have promised the people of Kenya.
And curiously, members of the National Assembly and the Senate should understand that they do not start earning any salary.
They don't.
They are reduced.
They are not in the official
the swearing in has got no impact with the outcome of the decision.
Correct.
Exactly. Okay. The other big headline, still with focus on the National Assembly and the Senate, is a race for speakers' posts. It's heating up now after the gazettement of the date for their very first sitting, which is Thursday next week. One of the very first things they will do is elect a speaker. Now there's intense lobbying for top posts in Senate and National Assembly. The race, if I could just read the first two paragraphs, the race for top leadership positions in both the National Assembly and the Senate has intensified ahead of the convening of the 12th Parliament next week. This has to do with the announcement. Now yesterday, and I'm quoting the Nation learnt that Water Cabinet Secretary Eugene Wamalwa and former Bungoma Governor Kenneth Lusaka's names are among those being considered by Jubilee Party for National Assembly Speaker, alongside that of incumbent Justin Muturi. Elsewhere, former Kisii Senator Chris Obure, who lost his bid for the county's governorship, is among those expected to run for the Senate Speaker position against incumbent Ekwe Ethuro. Of course, there are other contests for Deputy Speaker, alongside contests for Chief Whip, Majority Whip, Minority Whip, with the Majority Leader, Minority Leader in both houses. But the race for Speaker, it's very interesting to see this kind of realignment, this kind of a push. CS Eugene Wamalwa for Speaker of the National Assembly. Mary?
We go back to that marvelous year, 2022. The President was able to make inroads in Western Kenya. A stronghold supposedly of NASA.
Yes.
If he gives either if Ken Lusaka or Eugene Wamalwa actually take those positions, what you'll be looking at is individuals who become the face of Western Kenya politics. And then it's about the numbers for the Deputy President.
So it is about the Deputy President now.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, he's going to run for President in 2022. But we've heard Governor Joho saying that he's going to run for president, and we'll be hearing a lot more of this. So right now it's about realignment, it's about associating yourself with a winning ticket and getting the numbers.
Yes. And of course back in 2013 it must have been a trade-off between TNA and URP back then, that TNA gets Speaker of the National Assembly. Justin Muturi was very close to the President, and then URP gets to appoint the Majority Leader, Aden Duale. But now if we are seeing that the Deputy President wants to probably have a say in the Speaker's position, are we likely then therefore to see a change in who becomes Leader of Majority?
There are two things I have to talk about. One, I agree with her entirely. It's the position of the Speaker as a political trading. And for the names that have been listed there, I only see two things happening. One, it could either go to Eugene Wamalwa, or it could go to the incumbent who is Justin Muturi. If you are looking at futuristic, the chances of Justin Muturi retaining it is very high because of the dynamics of the 2022 politics. I see no chances for Ken Lusaka, reason being that position in most time is reserved for a lawyer. The last I checked is not a lawyer. And the reasons why we reserve that position for a lawyer is that you remember the Marende debate when the coalition government was very tricky. You need a legal mind to read and analyze and make decisions, because the Speaker also makes judgments, so speaking, in Parliament. So I'm seeing a trade-off in terms of how they are going to realign themselves in terms of that position. Of course, Jubilee that position will go to someone they really believe in, and that person must be able to bring votes for 2022 election. So that's how they're looking at it. And the same applies to the
Justin Muturi in terms of bringing votes vis-a-vis Eugene Wamalwa, because as Mary put it, Eugene Wamalwa is with an outlook to capture Western, entice the Western Kenya vote.
Yes, but you see, Eugene Wamalwa is not a very big force in Western.
But if you give him the Speaker's position, it becomes a big force.
If you give him the Speaker's position, it becomes a force. But he's not a very big force in Western Kenya, that for sure. But when you look at Justin Muturi, I think it's from Meru or Embu. From Meru and Embu. William Ruto most likely will be going for the next presidency, will want that consolidated vote. If you look between Meru and Embu, Tarakaniti area, and you look at Western, you will see more votes coming from that region. So it's all about numbers. That's the nature of politics.
And whoever is given this will also affect who's given the position of leader of majority. For example, if, as I said, Eugene Wamalwa gets this one, probably they will be looking to replace Aden Duale. Do you see any possibility of replacing Aden Duale as majority leader?
First of all, we have to understand the position of the majority leader. The position of the majority leader is all about loyalty and pushing the agenda of the majority party, which is Jubilee. So far, Aden Duale has done a very good job, regardless of regardless of what he does and what he says. He has played that role, however much he leaves a bad taste in Kenyans' mouth every time he speaks. But you have to understand, in every government there has to be an Aden Duale.
You need an Aden Duale.
You need an Aden Duale every time. And he has proved his loyalty. That is what all about the position of the majority leader is about. On the position of the Speaker, Justin Muturi was seen campaigning really hard for Jubilee. So he has cut a niche for himself in the party. It's all about party loyalty, it's all about numbers, and Justin Muturi has it. Aden Duale has proved himself, regardless of how he does it, whether it's right or wrong. And sometimes you wonder, his opinions, do they represent the president and the government of the day? But what I'm keen on looking at is the Senate, the Senate. And yesterday, as I was watching the news, I saw Kihika's name.
Susan Kihika.
Susan Kihika, yes, from Nakuru. For me, I think she's qualified. She's qualified for the job. She has held. She's a woman. But here is the trick. I really want a woman to be given that job of the Senate, because then if we do, we get the two-third gender rule. We comply with Article 181, Article 81. However, if you give it to Kihika, then you reduce the number of the elected members of senators. Then you beat the logic of trying to gain to comply with Article 81. So she's qualified, but I wish we could give it to another woman who is qualified for the job, but is not part of the 3 elected members of the Senate.
Okay. Yes. Oh wow, a very.
But before we forget this, what is important for me and what disturbed me in this parliament is that when you are a Speaker of the National Assembly, please remember you are a Speaker of the National Assembly, and you have to cut a niche of representing all political parties.
Was really accused of bias.
Yeah, you have to cut a niche of representing all interests of all those political parties there. And you remember that Marende, with due respect, he did a very good job in terms of weighing. He was there when the things were very dynamic, the coalition government, the Nusumukate government, and was able to weigh things on a very interesting scale to ensure that it's not about supremacy taking place, but it's about what is good for the country. So whoever comes in next time, if it's Justin Muturi, I hope that he will cut a niche of being more biased, more neutral on some issues.
Just before you go to him, Jubilee has set a precedent of supporting women in positions of power. They have the 3 elected members of the Senate are from the Jubilee party. I wish they could use their numbers to put a woman speaker, both in the National Assembly.
Incidentally, they have a majority in both houses. They could actually get to elect.
They could do it. And that they will be propagating for Article 81, which I am a champion.
Mary says it's all about Deputy President and his ambitions to become President in 2022. But also, remember, the President has a different interest this time round, and that's securing his legacy. Don't you think that he will also want to have a say on who becomes Speaker, who becomes Leader of Majority? Because yes, there's on one hand the Deputy President's ambitions, on the other hand he does not just want to leave his presidency like that all we'll remember was that he was succeeded by William Ruto.
Fred, when I look at the President's legacy, of course it will be in his favor to get somebody who is pro his agenda as a Speaker, because there's a lot of cleaning up to be done in this country, and also at the executive level in terms of Parliament's contribution. So if you get a Speaker who is pro your policies or pro your agenda, then you're most likely to have a lot of things passed in Parliament in your favor, and that is what His Excellency the President should look at. But now when you come to the politics of for instance of the individuals that have been mentioned, Justin Muturi, okay, with all due respect, he did a good job, no matter how much you look at it, because the people who put him into power,
he delivered for them.
He delivered for them. Yes. If you are to change to any other person there, they're all going for the same thing. The only thing I'm not sure about with regards to Eugene is that is he being fronted as a likely candidate, or is it a mechanism of trying to face him out?
Well, remember the Speaker's position, especially the Speaker of the National Assembly, that position is very powerful. He's third from the President, the Chief Justice, and then the Speaker of the National Assembly, and that's a very powerful position. Unfortunately, our time is up. We need to wrap up our news review this morning. Thank you so much, Amina Mohammed, President, Law Student Society of Kenya, Mary Mwangi, sorry for that, Mary Mwangi, an analyst, a very familiar face on this panel, Eric Wanjohi, and also Kakai Kissinger, human rights activist and attorney, also a former acting chief registrar of the judiciary, helping us look at the headlines this morning. Remember, there are other very interesting headlines. Okiya Omtata has gone to court seeking to change our electoral system for us to adopt the electoral college system like in the United States. Will it work? Will it not? Remember, Power Breakfast still continues. We have a lot of music, DJ music. Q Band is still in the house, plus a lot more interviews. Willis Raburu and Joy Mudengi will be bringing us more in the next hour. The hashtag to use is Power Breakfast. For me and my panelists, It's Good Morning.